Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this session of the Tacoma Park City Council. And I think sitting in for our clerk today, we have Irma. Is she online?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Irma, do you want to call the roll?
Sure. Mayor Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Kovar,
Here.
Councilmember DeBala,
Present.
Councilmember Costello,
Here.
Councilmember Siemens,
Present.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Searcy.
Here.
Great, we're all here. All right, no proclamations tonight. Looking at our meetings moving forward for the rest of the month. Next week is June 15th. For the record, we'll have a World Refugee Day proclamation and a Juneteenth proclamation. Our work sessions will include a report from the Urban Forest Manager, procurement item for vegetation maintenance contract, tentatively a resolution establishing a public safety committee, resolution regarding legislative action requests, which we're speaking about tonight. Then on Wednesday, June 22nd at 7:30, we have a voting session, a resolution approving submissions of MML legislative action requests. Tentatively, we'll have the single reading ordinance approving a contract for vegetation management. Our work sessions on this 22nd will include presentation of organizational needs and risk assessment study, presentation of the compensation study. Tentatively, we'll have a request, a work session on a request for council support of a NEED grant application. That's a National Capital Strategic Economic Development Fund grant. And we'll have appointments to boards and committees. Wednesday, June 29th, we are not planning to meet because it's the 5th Wednesday of June. And we will be back after the 4th of July holiday on Wednesday, July 6th. For the record, we'll have a proclamation of the 25th anniversary of Tacoma Park unification. That 25th anniversary, the date of it is actually on July 1st, 2022. We'll have more information about events coming up around that in the fall. Then we'll have a voting session, a resolution supporting tentatively the National Capital Strategic Economic Development Fund grant application, and a resolution providing for appointments and reappointments to boards and committees. Our work sessions on July 6th, tentatively, we have scheduled a discussion of possible election code amendments, ARPA procurement contract for direct cash assistance program, and Tacoma Street Rate. And that will take us into mid-July. Now I will take public comments. No one signed up for public comments online, so I'll just see if we have any public comments this evening in the auditorium. First, public comments on our voting item. Our one voting item tonight is a single reading ordinance awarding FY23 Community Quality of Life grants. Do we have any comments on that? Now move to council comments. Any council comments this evening? Councilman Kostick.
Thank you. We moved so fast, I had to take some time to get my notes back up. Well, first of all, I just want to let folks know who maybe haven't seen my announcement earlier today, which went out letting people know that I am not planning on running for re-election this fall. I wanted to make sure that I got this information out as soon as possible so that people who might be thinking about running could start to think about their plans and know that the seat is going to be open. Obviously, people are welcome to run for election even when it's not, but I know sometimes it can change people's plans if they know that. Just also want to say, you know, I really have found it to be a great honor to serve in this position. Have really enjoyed getting to know so many wonderful people, and it's been just a huge honor to serve as the representative for Ward 3. So thank you for entrusting me with this role. And of course, I will be here between now and November and continuing to represent you. So please do keep in touch during that time. And then I just have a few other brief comments. One is, along with a couple of my colleagues, I am attending the Maryland Municipal League Conference starting on Sunday, and look forward to attending the meetings there and learning a little bit and meeting with representatives from other municipalities across Maryland. And I also want to flag that next week is a pretty big vote in the Transportation Planning Board for the region. I do anticipate that we'll be voting on the long-range transportation plan, which is a plan that includes all of the transportation projects for the region between now and 2045, at least all of the projects that meet a certain threshold for being larger scale projects that have to be required by the federal government to be in that plan. In the past, when we did this about, I think it was 4 years ago now, in 2018, I did vote against the plan based on the inclusion of the Beltway project and expansion by MDOT. And I do, again, intend to vote against the project because of inclusion of the plans to expand 270, as well as just a general focus of the plan on not really meeting our climate needs to the extent that I think it should, although I do think we are making good progress on that front. So I just want to make that note. If any of my colleagues have concerns about that, please do let me know. We won't have a meeting between now and then, and the meeting materials are actually not posted yet for the TPB, so I don't know all of the specifics, but I will share those with you as soon as I get them. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Searcy.
Good evening. So I will also be joining a few of my colleagues at MML next week. Looking forward to participating and learning about what other jurisdictions are doing to improve their communities. I want to thank Delegate Laura Charkoudian for organizing an event today to walk the Crossroads area with MDOT as well as representatives from the Chesapeake Bay Trust to talk about tree plantings and the impact of the Purple Line on our ability to plant trees along not only the right-of-way but also private property, which is a strong emphasis in coming up with ideas. And so definitely want to thank city staff, our arborist, Marty Fry, who was in attendance, as well as the Tacoma Langley Crossroads CDA Executive Director, Kaylee De La Puente, who attended as well. We are hopeful that this is just the first of many conversations that we can have with not only entities that can provide grant funds, but also to MDOT staff that can actually help us with bridging the necessary connections with Purple Line contractors so that we can logistically work with our partners in the Crossroads area to plant more trees. So I definitely want to thank Delegate Charkoudian for all of her work in that regard. For the residents on Hopewell, Larch, and Kentland, we are ready to look at designs for traffic calming. So you should have received, or you will be receiving, a letter notifying you of an upcoming meeting on June the 23rd at on June the 23rd at 7 p.m. And so definitely want to encourage everyone to participate. Public Works will walk through sidewalk design plans, and just as again, we managed to work with Prince George's County to make sure that there's connectivity between the city of Tacoma Park sidewalks as well as the area that goes into Prince George's County. So we're excited about that. Another quick update, don't forget about the Summer Mercado on Ann Street, and that is June the 25th from 1 until 6 p.m. I want to encourage people to please come out, enjoy some great food, listen to some awesome music, and just have fun in the summer. And I think that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember, I'm going to go Councilmember DeBala and then Kovar and Smith, because Councilman DeBala's had a hand up for a while.
Thank you. I found the raised hand button. That's the good news. Thank you to City TV for hooking me up. I appreciate that. And thank you to the crossing guards in the city for all of your service. Today was Crossing Guard Day. I also wanted to thank the rec department. I really enjoyed the movie Saturday night, the outdoor movie, and I hope we can do some more of those this summer. That was just a lot of fun. It was very well attended and very well run. Speaking of transportation, I was going to highlight for folks that the New Hampshire Avenue BRT, proposed BRT, down New Hampshire Avenue, is going to be the subject of several meetings in the next few weeks to hear from the community about roots, about the plans. And if you go to New Hampshire Avenue BRT, you'll see the first one is the 15th, which is next week. And there's 2 more after that, all not in Tacoma Park, but pretty close. And it's an important addition to our transportation network. So I hope y'all can come out and comment. 2 more quick announcements. Friends of the Library tomorrow night is having their annual meeting, and the featured speaker is the very exciting sports writer, Kevin Blackstone. Tuesday, Neighborhood Association in Long Branch, Sligo is hosting the city and county staff to talk about the minor master plan for the Washington Hospital area. And that'll be virtual, I believe, only at 7 o'clock next Tuesday. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to express my appreciation first to the Tacoma Park Middle School Principal Martin and her staff, who joined a small group of residents and myself and some county staff to tour the small conservation area that's between the tennis courts next to the middle school and the residences on Darwin Avenue. And it's a small conservation area, which is good, but there is a pathway through there, and a lot of the trees are untended now. One recently fell on one of the residents' homes, fortunately damaged only the porch and not the house or injured anybody, but it was still a serious matter. And other trees are leaning, and it's an area that kids sometimes walk in on their way to and from school. So the county agreed to try to work on improving the maintenance there. So that was positive. And I will say another county tree issue, by the way, Marty Fry from the city was also at that meeting with our urban forest manager, which I appreciate. Another tree-related matter on the Ed Wilhelm Field, if you look at the hill that leads up to the area where the kids have their small playground, a number of the trees there have very exposed roots, and the county staff, at my request, have taken a look at that, and they've determined the trees are healthy at the moment, but they're going to be coming back to figure out how to prevent the situation with the roots from worsening, which would either harm the trees or potentially be a safety threat. One other thing, people may be familiar with the boundary stones around the city that were put in place when George Washington was president, and there's one on Maple Avenue, just a block off of where Busboys and Poets is located. They used to have a plaque. The plaque.
Excuse me, Councilmember Kovar, people can't hear you.
Oh.
So maybe lean closer. I'm getting.
Sorry about that.
I'm not able to hear the auditorium all of a sudden. I
Yeah.
didn't hear.
We think it was just me standing too far. Can you hear this? No?
Can you hear me, Cindy, now? No, I think folks
Okay.
online can no longer hear the auditorium. I'm getting text messages.
Okay.
So it's not just you, Peter, obviously.
Okay. Well, I can stop while we get it figured out.
I can hear everybody now.
Okay, you
All
can
right.
continue.
Well,
Yeah.
so there were 2 tree matters that I mentioned, and I expressed my appreciation on both of those. With regard to the boundary stone on Maple Avenue, there used to be a plaque on there, and it was removed some years ago. And at the request of some neighbors, we checked into it, and it's actually through the National Park Service, the Daughters of the American Revolution maintain the boundary stones, and so they've agreed to put a plaque up, and I met with somebody from the group and actually city staff as well, Dale Braithwaite, our very hardworking public works manager. And so we may be later in the summer and the fall having a plaque placement day, and we'll provide more information about that. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was this Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Old Town area, commercial area, there's a Pride Day celebration. And so I encourage folks to come by. There's a variety of activities and ways of expressing support for the LGBTQ plus community. And that's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., really coinciding with the same time that the farmers market will be taking place in the same area. And a number of the businesses, not just on Laurel, but on Carroll, are participating in the event. So please consider coming by if you can. Thanks.
Great, Councilmember Smith.
First, would like to say that last week I wasn't here, I participated in a national webinar on HR 40, the reparations bill. There has been an ask to the White House for President Biden to sign an executive order. So I was joined by national leaders to advocate for this request. I would like to personally congratulate my niece, who is graduating from high school Friday. We are extremely excited. So I will be traveling up to New Jersey to spend time with the family. It's a great achievement. And then finally, I had the opportunity to attend a sustainability event in Ward 5, and it was to discuss with residents and I guess folks that live in Silver Spring about transitioning from gas to electric. You know, I grew up on the West Coast, and very few homes had gas stoves. So, you know, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and you still get great food cooking with electric. But one thing that did concern me, and I don't know if this is like a new policy, Mr. Fox, but has it changed that city staff doesn't recognize council members at events that city staff organizes, or they may give remarks, or is it that council members are no longer to give remarks? Or I'm just trying to understand if we have a different policy at this time. Thank you.
Sorry.
Councilmember Smith, I'll work with staff and get a response back to you. I would say that if there is an event and council's at, council should be recognized. But I can't speak to what we used to do. I would have to talk to staff and get some more information on that, and I can follow up with you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you. I think everyone has said everything already. Just want to say thank you for the Crossing Guard Appreciation Day. Thank you to all of our crossing guards. And I know we have plenty of time, but I know since my colleagues, Councilman Costick and Kovar, have announced, oh, it looks like we have a thunderstorm coming through, announced that they were not seeking re-election. Just want to remind folks that you can start registering for with the city clerk on Monday, actually, to look at running for city office, and the website is fairly up to date. And so if people are going to start thinking about it, I think now is a good time. So, and I just want to extend my thanks to both Councilmember Kovar and Costick, and I know there'll be plenty of time to do that in the upcoming months, but thank you. Great, and I think that's it. I don't know if the city manager has anything else?
Nothing this evening, Madam Mayor.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Then we will move to our single reading ordinance awarding the FY23 Community Quality of Life Grants. Last week, our committee on community grants came and did a wonderful presentation for us. All the information is up on the city website, so I will ask someone if they would like to move this ordinance. Councilman Searcy moved, Councilman DeBala second. Any questions or comments? Okay, Councilman Costick.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I'm abstaining from this vote due to work I do with one of these organizations in my day job. Thank
Okay,
you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, seeing none, will the, since this is a single reading ordinance and we have one council member online, will the Assistant City Clerk please call the vote?
Sure. Mayor Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Kovar,
Yes?
Councilmember DeBala,
Abstain?
Councilmember Siemens,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Searcy.
Aye.
Thank you so much. And I ask the city manager to please extend our thanks to the city staff who assist with that committee. Next, we have our work session on our post 2022 legislative wrap up, looking at legislative priorities and looking at 2023. Don't get much rest. And I think I will turn it over to Ann Sika and Suhani, who it's just been a few short weeks, I think, since the last time you were here giving us an update, but I hope you both got some rest and able to talk to us about what we can, what happened in 2022 and what we can anticipate and look forward to in the next year.
Sounds great. Thank you. And I know we had a slide deck. I'm not sure if folks have it or if it's going to be put up.
I think it was going to be put up, but maybe not. No. Oh, can you do screen share? I think you can do screen share.
I can do that.
Yes.
All right.
Suhani,
Yes,
do
I
you
was
want to
told
do
that.
that or do
Sorry,
you
that's
want
my
me
fault.
to?
I can do it. I got it. I think this is the right one. Are folks able to see my screen?
Starting to.
Yes, it says yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and if anyone has a question during this, just please let me know. Everyone's little box is now small, so I can't really see a lot. But first, just wanted to say hello. I feel like it's been a while since we've all met again, but this presentation is fairly short. It's going to mostly kind of wrap up some big highlights from the 2022 session, and kind of as the title says, we're going to look forward into 2023 and kind of chat about what we can anticipate. In addition to that, the presentation just kind of touches on some priorities that Tacoma Park has kind of focused on previously as we think about moving forward and kind of brainstorming what things the city may want to prioritize and think about moving forward as well, in light of kind of the things that we anticipate from the legislator. And Anne, if there's anything that I'm missing, feel free to kind of jump on and add as I go through. Great. So this is just a list of the 2021 to 2022 priorities for the city of Tacoma Park. And, these guiding principles kind of helped us figure out which bills to monitor and track as the session goes on as well. So a lot of these things are kind of found within our very long bill charts that I'm sure no one misses seeing. So some of the big priorities were, first and foremost, mitigating COVID-19, having a livable community, fiscally sustainable government. And this is something that has been highlighted, not just in the city of Tacoma Park, but also amongst other municipalities, having an environmentally sustainable government and the engaged, responsive, service-oriented government. And then also just community development for an equitable quality of life. So the subject areas for our legislative bill tracking from this past session include general bills, and the general bills kind of included kind of some very large scale bills that didn't fit into kind of the smaller subcategories that we had. So the general bills included things like the big budget language, cannabis was like a really big bill this year, so we included that. So that's what we mean by general bills. In addition to that, we looked into bills that kind of emphasize community support, the environment. Government is kind of more just, structural, how government works, housing and some subcategories within housing, public safety and transportation, which also includes infrastructure. So a lot happened in the 2022 legislative session, and Tacoma Park was pretty active on a lot of bills. In 2022, Tacoma Park actively supported 15 bills. And what I mean by actively supported, that means we either provided written testimony specifically on the bill, or either a council member or Mayor Stewart or Ann and I just weighed in orally on oral testimony. In addition to the including the 15 actively supported bills. We also just weighed in on 24 bills, meaning that could be through a sign-on letter, or, you know, things like that. Of the 24 bills, 11 were considered to be successful, and this includes bills that Takoma Park opposed that did not pass through the legislature. Some of these really big bills that Takoma Park supported include the Climate Solutions Now bill, energy efficiency programs for low-income housing, and Vision Zero implementation. 13 bills were considered to be unsuccessful. And Takoma Park provided oral testimony about a half a dozen bills, including just cause eviction, the Safer Communities Fund and Task Force, child access prevention legislation, and the Environmental Human Rights Bill. Okay, so looking forward, kind of following this recap of 2022, and kind of, you know, considering next steps for 2023, there's a number of kind of important dates to consider that will definitely impact maybe which priorities will be chosen. So a number of priorities will just depend on these upcoming elections, the governor, the comptroller, attorney general, all members of the General Assembly, and then obviously the city and county elections as well. So the primary election date will be July 19th. Early voting will start July 7th. And then the general election day will be November 8th. Okay, and like I mentioned from the previous slide, it's a little bit, you know, difficult to really figure out the priorities just yet because there are so many changes that we're anticipating happening, but there are some conversations that we have had where we can kind of have a feel for what we, you know, think will be in the works in the 2023 session. So we can anticipate some capital project funding and bond opportunities. There's been some conversations with a number of members that, you know, this is something that especially municipalities can really engage in. The transportation and infrastructure investment dollars are also coming through. I think there are a number of studies right now in the works. I'm kind of trying to figure out where that allocation of money will go. So there is probably going to be some bill or some money moving next year that will happen. Cannabis legislation and its potential revenue stream could possibly also be a really big item next year, depending on whether it goes through in the as a ballot measure. There's also a number of studies being done right now on cannabis as well, so we can anticipate those coming out. And lastly, housing issues will also likely be talked about next session as well. And this includes affordable housing development, home ownership, and renters issues, which is something Takoma Park has been actively engaged in and following for this past year as well. Okay, and I know this is a lot of words, but I'll kind of, you know, water this down just a little bit. So the importance of kind of engaging with the Maryland Municipal League has been discussed a number of times. So I think Mayor Stewart, you kind of mentioned the legislative action requests a little bit earlier. So I was just going to provide the date here for it. The deadline for the legislative action request to MML will be July 1st. And we confirmed with MML that this is indeed the date, regardless of, you know, the elections and all these things happening. The one kind of change, I guess, would be that the LARs can be submitted without council approval, so long as it receives council approval vote before the first MML legislative committee meeting in August. So that's just a slight change this year. And I just listed out some of the legislative action requests from Takoma Park from last year. I don't need to like really read through them. A lot of them are kind of similar to the priorities that Takoma Park, the city of Takoma Park had. And a lot of these are also kind of touched on through things that we monitored last year. And I'll just open up to any questions or discussions, or Anne, if you have anything to add, I'm happy to answer.
I think that was rather thorough.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And why don't we folks can ask some general questions or comments, and then I think we do want to move this conversation towards areas regarding our legislative action requests. So Councilmember Smith?
Thank you for your presentation. I would first want to start off by saying next session, I hope as a council and as our lobbyists in Annapolis, we focus on fewer bills rather than trying to cover everything. What is important to me is that we actually support bills that pass. So I would, rather than, I saw the list that you had, there were like, I don't know, 7, 8 different categories that you sent bills in or you were lobbying on our behalf. I would hope we can reduce that list. The other thing is, I would like to make a request that council can meet with the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Delegates before the session begins to find out their agenda and to let them know our agenda. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Costick.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I know some of the materials kind of got into this, but I was just curious in terms of the unsuccessful bills, if there are specific thoughts you have in terms of bills maybe we should focus on again, or, you know, maybe it just wasn't the right time and they didn't pass for that reason, or if there's some fundamental, you know, inability for that bill maybe to pass, it just doesn't seem like there's widespread support for it. And if there are certain things you think we maybe shouldn't spend our time focusing on in the future, or if it's just, you know, there are specific things we really should emphasize out of those that weren't successful.
One thing I would say in response to that is, first and foremost, it was an election year. And so that had an impact on things that passed and things that didn't pass. So, you know, and we can go back and forth, you know, with each bill and sort of say which ones we think were more or less impacted by that fact. You know, there are, just as an example, you know, there were a number of housing bills that the city weighed in on. And, you know, the one that is always at the top of the city's list is Delegate Wilkins' Just Cause eviction bill. That bill was very different this year. And instead of it, you know, instead of it making Montgomery County enact this, it said any jurisdiction may, if they want, enact this. And even that didn't get through. And that did not have to do with the election. That has to do with really the opposition by one major leader in the House. So, you know, so each bill kind of, you know, has its own reasoning why something didn't pass. And, you know, I think that there are also times that you put in bills that are in for the first time. I'm thinking of one of the bills, and Councilmember Kovar testified on it in the Senate. It was Senator Smith's and Delegate Wilkins' bill on community, trying to find the name of it, I'm sorry, the Safer Communities Fund. It's the first time that they've had that in. And so, you know, it was worth supporting because it came from the district legislators. It fits in extraordinarily well with the priorities of the city, the work of the city, and you know, but was the first time that it had come up. So it's worth an education. So I'm just sort of grabbing at a couple of things. There are reasons for all of it. You know, why some things are successful and not, and each year is different as well. So, you know, if you have particular questions about particular bills, we can talk about that as well. I do not believe it is an indication of, you know, Takoma Park picking the wrong issues or Takoma Park not having enough influence or too much in some cases. I think it's, you know, it's a combination of things and it's issue by issue.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think also, you know, just from what I've seen of your work, I really appreciate the way you've been able to focus on our priorities. And I do think there are times when maybe it's important for us to support something and show that and try to start to move the needle, even if it's not time quite yet for the rest of the state to support it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilman Kovar.
Thank you. And let me say first, thanks again to Ann and Suhani for working with us and doing a good job for us in Annapolis. Certainly appreciate it. And there were plenty of instances in which we asked them for information. It didn't rise to the level of supporting or opposing a bill, just to help us understand what was going on. And they, I thought, did a good job of assisting us in that way. I don't think tonight we're going to be picking what the issues are that we should support. The one, though, I think that we really do want to get back to and keep pushing for is the renters legislation, because I think that's a really important initiative in general, but specifically for our community too, where we have so many renters, and given some of the challenges that occurred during COVID and will come up again, they still exist now as we hopefully come out of COVID, but in any future type of financial downturn or other stressed situation like that, in many cases, people who are renting are among the first who are really facing difficulty. So I would like to see that as one of the ones that we continue working on. As far as, you know, the number and the sort of percentage that do or don't succeed, and I appreciate Councilmember Smith mentioning that. I thought about this before the meeting, and to me, if we, and this the same thing applies maybe when you're endorsing candidates too, if you get 100% right, you might have left a few efforts on the table, but if you get, you know, only 20% right, you probably didn't, you know, really get anywhere that good. So I sort of figure we should be somewhere between 50 and 100%. So we're pushing harder, and maybe our grasp exceeds our reach, or the other way around, whichever the phrase is. But I think it is worth pushing on some that maybe aren't quite ripe for passage yet, maybe because it's the first time it's come up, or because, for example, one of our allies is looking for help, and if we help them, it can facilitate further actions that are favorable to us. So I understand what Councilmember Smith is saying. You know, maybe in some cases we can cut back on some, but I do think it's worth doing some of the sort of toiling at the initial level to help on some of these too, because maybe down the road they will yield something more valuable. So important set of questions to think about, though, which ones and how many we want to do. But I think overall the record was positive, and the fight was worth it on the ones that didn't pass. Thanks.
Councilman Searcy.
Well, first I want to thank Ann and Suhani for all of the work that you all did. I know moving to the hybrid approach for this legislation has been interesting, to say the least. But I do think that when I kind of like to think of things at a higher level in terms of the topics that we're covering, the issues that we're covering. And so, you know, I agree, you know, we went after a lot of things, but we also went after a lot of bills within very similar issue areas, which sometimes can, some things float to the top, some things don't. But one of the things that I think you responded to when you responded to Councilmember Costick's question, issues that maybe were a little left on the table, or perhaps not necessarily the bills, but the topical areas that would definitely be of interest to the city, but perhaps maybe there weren't many bills in that area, or there, you know, there just wasn't much traction. Did you see any cases of that where some of the things or topics or issues that we are really pushing for? I did see a little bit like workforce development, childcare, but the bills in session just kind of weren't that many that aligned with an area or issue that's important to the city.
So I think if you go back to what the priorities were for the city, I think some of the wording is very broad, and it's trying to figure out what things fit into that. When we talk about some of the community support bills that we looked at, and things that are about a livable community for all, and an equitable quality of life, I think that we really do try to look at what are the bills that fit that. And that might be, there was a bill about guaranteeing counsel for in immigration courts. There are, various kinds of healthcare related bills. And it certainly speaks to the quality of life, but it isn't necessarily something that the council said, if there's a bill about this specific thing, we want to weigh in. That's what we then do, I think, in the legislative work group, is try to identify which ones are the ones that speak most to the topics that have been identified as priority. I think one of the things you said it perfectly, that sometimes there just aren't bills on particular topics. So part of that is, is there something more proactive that the city is interested in doing? And we want to, ask one of our legislators to put forth a bill. We can certainly do that as well. So, and then when we are working on what's going on in the legislature, I think the process in having the work group certainly helps because of the time frame of the legislative session. But I also hope that folks know that if there are things that come up, and this did come up from time to time, I think in our weekly, updates, when there were things that folks had questions about that weren't necessarily on the list, we certainly tried to respond to that. And I think if there was something that folks decided, hey, we didn't know in July or November or even in December was going to be a priority, but something gets introduced that seems really on point. From a lobbyist perspective, we can shift. And I think that then becomes, making sure that we have the right process with the city council to have the city council also make that pivot.
And so it sounds like the subcommittee approach was one that was helpful for us to make sure that we're able to kind of provide that direction and the pivot if we needed to.
Yes, well, from my perspective, obviously that matters more to who was on the work group.
Great, thank you.
Councilman DeBala?
Yes, thank you. So on a more general, on a specific question that I have about this past session is the category of bills that the city supported that got vetoed by the governor. And I am thinking in particular of an energy bill that for low income, for public housing to set energy standards that I believe got vetoed. So from a practical point of view, that seems like that could be on the city's list until there's a reason why that's not a good idea. But I think the focus tonight is the more general, what do we want to ask of MML? On the climate side, Suhani and I talked about this, but I'll just share with everybody else. We're not seeing at this time any kind of major climate legislation. That was one of the big things that happened this year. So as far as what we ask MML to focus on, we have for several years asked them to focus on climate. Maybe we can give that one a rest this coming year. Within the environmental arena, the two things that come to mind at the moment, perhaps not for MML, but I'll just mention them, is a rewrite of the plastics bill that was introduced this past year. And that would be something that might get MML's attention, and any sort of climate cleanup work, some of which might be also related to municipal authorities. So does a municipality or a county have the authority to do something more stringent than the state? And that might be something we would want to think about highlighting for MML. I don't know if it's a priority. I'm just putting some ideas out. I thought the system this year was, for the most part, pretty smooth and went pretty well. There does have to be this reacting right on the spot, almost in real time. This subgroup is really the only way to do that. Although it is kind of time consuming and a little crazy, but it seemed to work, and it may have resulted in us weighing in as a city on a whole bunch of things we weren't planning on. But again, going back to the focus here, what did we ask from MML last year? How do we do on that? My other two thoughts for MML are, what's the sort of equivalent of the climate 5 years ago? And I think it's the Vision Zero Safe Streets package of things, and transit, not highway transportation, but transit generally. That might be an area that we would like to see. And then, of course, housing, rental housing, things that will benefit the half of our residents that are renters. So those are some thoughts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilwoman DeBala. I'll jump in and just say thank you. I think the subgroup worked really well this year. And I actually think this year, given the way that we've implemented over the last couple of years, and with you and now with Suhani, the way that we prioritized at the beginning, what we're going to weigh in on has been working really well. I'll jump in and agree with, I think, a couple of my colleagues who said that I think we should think about putting into an MML legislative action request, something regarding housing. Last year, we had a general one that had 4 bullets to it. And maybe Suhani and Ann, if you had a chance to look at that and give us suggestions on if we were to go in that direction, how you would update it for the coming session. But I think, obviously keeping Just Cause there and other things that did not move this legislative session, there are new things that the housing advocates are talking about that we may want to push MML on. I also had on my list and agree with Councilman DeBala, looking at Vision Zero. I know Delegate Charkoudian had a number of bills, and others did as well, on SHA. Some of them did move forward, but some did not. And I think this is going to be, given around the country and in the state of Maryland, pedestrian traffic deaths, and really the horrendous things that we're seeing now, particularly with children. I think this is going to be a place that we're really going to need to push the state on. So I would add that. And then the other area would be on the cannabis legislation, because I think MML has to take a strong stand on that, because we need to make sure municipalities are part of that and part of what revenue may come in from that. So those would be the 3 areas I would suggest us consider next week. Councilmember Smith.
First, I would agree with the cannabis legislation. It just seems like it's taken way too long for the state of Maryland to legalize cannabis. But once we do it, we got to make sure we get it right. And the 157 jurisdictions in this state deserve a piece of that revenue. One thing that I would like to see in the LAR is for a percentage of the sales tax. That has been part of MML discussions in the past. There has been a working group. There's a whole bunch of research on the topic. We're going to have a new governor. The past Senate President Mike Miller did not want municipalities to have any part of the sales tax. So I think with a new governor, a new Senate president, it is an opportunity to once again start talking about increasing the revenue possibilities for municipalities. And, I mean, we're getting to a point where there just is not enough money when it comes to property and the modest level of income taxes, and we cannot really generate other or create other taxes. So I think we need to have a robust debate, and a bill needs to be drafted in the upcoming session for municipalities to get a part of the sales tax. And then another bill that was released last session, the condo HOA fund bill. I would like to see that bill get support again. I understand that there wasn't a senator to sponsor that bill. I would recommend that you all talk to Senator Augustine and ask him at my request to sponsor that bill. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else with suggestions to get on our list for discussion at our work session next week on MML legislative action requests? Cindy, I can't see you if you're raising your hand. Sorry, you're not. They don't have you in view.
She's not.
Nope, she's not. Okay, good. All right, well, I think we have at least 3, probably 4 or 5 items. I think we can pull those together with staff and Ann and Suhani, if you have thoughts on specific language that you would suggest for us, that would be terrific. We are going to have a work session next week to discuss it again, and then a vote the following week. So that we will get them in on time. So, well, and just a reminder for all of us that these are our requests to MML, and then we'll have an opportunity in the fall to go back to our specific legislative priorities. And sometimes they mirror them, and then we get much more specific in our priorities. So these are thinking of things that apply to municipalities generally in Maryland. So that's our better chance of getting it moving. Great. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. And I don't believe we have anything else on our agenda. I'm looking at the city manager to see if I forgot anything this evening. Deputy, nope. All right, then we will adjourn for tonight, and we'll be back here next week on the 15th. Thank you all.